9:34 on a Middle Monday. It's also a reaction Monday to the Iron Bowl 2019, the 84th edition, won by Auburn 48-45. Another classic game, unfortunately for Alabama. Most of these classic Iron Bowls seem to go to Auburn. As I saw on social media, an Auburn fan posted, we win all the memorable Iron Bowls. And I kind of agree with that. You know, you got the Van Tiffen kick. You've got the 2009 final drive, but for the most part, when these games come down to a final play or something weird or an officiating call, Auburn finds a way to get it done. Scott Moore is with us now, one segment late. Sorry about that, Scott. The phone lines were just lit up, so I wanted everybody to get in. And we will let you get in with Scott on the Bud Light hotline at 205-342-9904. Scott Moore from iTalkSEC and the Jay Barker Show. I've already discussed it a lot. I mean, it's one of those games, again, it's gonna stick in Iron Bowl lore for a long time. We've never seen a game quite like this one, and every time you go down there seems to be that potential. But to have a game of this magnitude with this many plays, drama a lot of times for football games is left for the final quarter or the final 6-8 minutes. This game had drama from the opening kickoff, Scott. Everybody was on the edge of their seats. It was a phenomenal football game. For Alabama fans, it's just disappointing that it ended the way it did, but it was a great, incredible game.
Well, for a national standpoint, it was probably, when you look at it, probably the best game of the college football season all the way around. I haven't seen a better one all year. I've tried to think about dramatic games this year. And there's been some big moments, but I'm not sure that game Saturday is not going to be, again, the best game of the whole season. Alabama-Georgia last year was generally considered, the best game of the year, the way it went down with everything on the line there. But from an entertainment standpoint, I think everybody around the country was like, wow, just kind of holding their breath. But, I tell you, just it was one of those games, again, where there are 4 or 5 plays, and the crazy thing you hear Coach Stallings used to say it, and great coaches always say it, there's always 4 or 5 plays in every game that decide the game, right? So, interesting thing here, though, Gary, if Alabama makes just one of 4 or 5 plays on that game Saturday, they win it. And so Alabama outgained them. Alabama dominated the football game. From start to finish, they dominated the football game. And it was mistakes, penalties. The crowd always affects Alabama down there. We talk about, Gary, I don't know how many times you and I talked about it this summer, about how difficult it is for an Alabama team to win at Jordan-Hare Stadium. To me, it's easier to go win a national championship than it is to win a football game.
I'm with you, Scott, 100%. For Alabama, winning at Jordan-Hare is the biggest obstacle every time the game is played.
Without question, it is. And I've heard criticism of the play calling. I've heard criticism of defense, and everybody's got their opinion. But if Alabama plays a mistake-free football game down there, and they've played mistake-free football games a lot during Nick Saban's tenure, Alabama wins that football game by 3 touchdowns. So, but that's not the way it is. You make mistakes there. You turn the football over. And Gary, I heard Gary Jim Tressel once say that, and I remember paying close attention to this. I was at the Fiesta Bowl down obviously over in Arizona. They were getting ready to play. I forget the team they were playing, but Jim Tressel said, he was talking. Somebody asked him about pick sixes. He said, "Listen, our data tells us that when you throw a pick six in a ball game, you get a 73% chance of losing that ball game, and it really doesn't matter when that pick six comes. You throw one, it's a 14-point swing, and it's hard to overcome those. For Alabama to throw 2 of them and still have a chance to win the ball game, I think that is remarkable that they were even in the ball game having those 2 mistakes. That said, Mac Jones played tremendously. Najee Harris played great. The offensive line had its moments. But the bottom line for Alabama is that when Alabama needed to get a stop, had to get a stop, the defense was unable to get one. And the offense, obviously, those worked on both ways. The kick return game was phenomenal, but it's the little things, again. A missed field goal, a false start here or there, And, just mistakes just added up. And in that environment down there in Auburn, Alabama, you got to play mistake-free football to win the ball game. Now, was that officials' call atrocious? Was it ridiculous? I've never seen a call like that. It was absolutely mind-boggling that they got away with that play down there. And I don't care who's playing in the ball game. I don't care if it's Auburn. I don't care if it's Alabama. I don't care if it's Tennessee or Georgia. That was absolutely ridiculous to not wave it off and say, "Hey, time is up." I mean, that is crazy to me. That was one play, but that play didn't lose the ball game. But that call was absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? The officials in the SEC this year, Gary, have been terrible. They've been bad all year long. Every week we've seen some kind of ridiculous call. I mean, we need to put these guys on salary, give them full-time jobs, because calling a football game, Gary, and making a mistake, it affects a lot of people's lives. It really does. I mean, it takes away from the enjoyment, the fairness of the ball game. They've got to do something about officiating, because this year has been an all-timer, and it wasn't just Saturday. It's been throughout the entire season. Officiating has been terrible, and the SEC's got to do something about it.
You're echoing Tom's comments. He called in earlier, and I don't think full-time officials are coming. I just don't see that happening. And I hear you, Scott, and I heard Tom. What my answer to that is I assume that's what they're doing. I can't imagine that the SEC office wants every Sunday and Monday for their officiating crews to just be torn apart. So I assume they're trying to do the best they can. They're trying to fix it. I'm with you 100% on that field goal. There's no way in the world that can happen. There's no way in the world that you can throw a screen pass with no timeouts, have it run in the field of play, have the guy tackled with 1 second, and then allow a team to run their field goal team out there, set it up as if there was a timeout, and let them kick the field goal. That can't happen. That can't. Yeah. There has to be a rule in place that regardless of whether there's a stoppage in play to check the time of the clock, that he has to roll that clock before you're able to come out there and line up and basically have an extra timeout. Basically, Auburn got 4 timeouts in the first half, and it was a huge play in the game. My assumption is the SEC will fix that. If they don't, then maybe I'll be with you and Tom that they're not trying to get better, because that can't happen. That can't happen. You can't give a team an extra timeout. You just can't do it. And it was a huge play in the game. And
I've said this too. Imagine this. Imagine if that had happened on the last play of the game, and you lose a game like that. But that was just, listen, that play, it was a big play in the game. Didn't lose the game. It didn't win the game for Auburn. Didn't lose it. There was a lot. You got to go play after that. And I thought Alabama overcame it and moved forward. But listen, bottom line is the official, and I'm doing a broad stroke here about every game this year. There's been an absolutely ridiculous missed call with the aid of replay. That's my problem. You go watch it on the video, and you still make the wrong call. That's where it's got to be overhauled. So it's happened. Look, it happened with Florida and South Carolina. It happened with Alabama and LSU. It's happened in every game this year. And the SEC addressed this at SEC Media Days. They even put up their own website about it. So I haven't seen them improve it. And I'm just saying, if you're going to go forward with this great game of ours that we all love and have a strong passion for, it cannot come down to an official's call where he looks at it on the video screen and still makes the wrong call. That's ridiculous, and something's got to be done about it. That's my whole soapbox about that. So I'll get off that now.
All right, before we get to Super Joe, you said something earlier that Alabama controlled the game. And if you've just looked at the numbers, if you'd have said Mac Jones was going to throw for 335 and 4 touchdowns, that Alabama was going to gain 515 yards to 354, that Alabama was going to run 77 plays to 65 plays, you'd have thought Alabama would have won the football game. In fairness to the defense, because the defense is getting ripped to shreds again. The defense really gave up 34 points. Not 48, and 31 if you want to say the fact that the field goal should not have been allowed. So they didn't play great, but they played better than Auburn's defense. That vaunted Auburn defense absolutely got shredded again. And because they won the game, I understand it doesn't matter. And Derek Brown They propped him up the whole game. Did he come up big at the end of the game? Yes, he made a couple nice plays. But for the most part, he and Marlon Davidson were non-factors in that game. And Alabama's offensive line has not gotten enough credit. Now, Gary Danielson waited all game for Brown to make a play. So once he finally made a couple, he went goo-goo gaga. But Alabama's offensive line played a heck of a game. All right, before we get to the break, Scott, let's get Super Joe on here, because then we've got Tom back again later on. Okay. But right now, Super Joe, you're on with Scott Moore.
Hey, Scott Moore, how you doing? How you doing, Gary? How y'all doing, partners?
Doing great, partner.
Man, but shoot, I'll tell you what, I was at the game out there, and I'll tell you what, it was a lot of whole injustice out there. I mean, that play calling and plus the officiating, I mean, it was just like, it was a trounce. I mean, I could just sit up here and look at it, but I'm going to take my hat off to Mac Jones. He went out there and played his heart out, which I didn't think he can handle that defense, and, he proves me wrong. I'm taking my hat off to the man. He went out there and played
sure did.
Hey, he took it on his shoulder. I got to give Mac Jones the credit. I mean, I just got to give it to him. I didn't even do it. And I'm going to say this, though. Now, what do you say now to why by us not going to the playoffs, okay? Now, who would you say we might be playing in the bowl game? Is that going to be decided next week or this week?
Yeah, it'll be decided after the season's over, Super Joe. It's going to probably directly depend on what happens in the SEC championship game, right, Scott? If Georgia beats LSU, both Georgia and LSU are going to the playoff, and then I guess Alabama would go to the Sugar Bowl. If Georgia gets beat, I imagine they go to the Sugar Bowl and Alabama to the Orange Bowl. Is that kind of the way you look at it?
Yeah, Florida's got a shot now to get in the Orange Bowl as well.
Yeah.
The Gators are 10-2, and quite frankly, I think Florida would go to the Orange Bowl, and it looks like to me Alabama would end up in the Cotton Bowl, probably against Memphis or Boise State. So a lot of things still have to fall into place, but those are the three destinations for Alabama. Sugar Bowl probably not likely with Georgia right now, and Florida perfect fit for the Orange. So I think Alabama's best bet right now probably end up in Dallas in the Sugar Bowl. That game is on December 28th, by the way.
All right, Super Joe, thanks for the phone call. We've got to get to our thank you, partner. We got to get to our break, and I know Tom is back on hold wanting to chime in on the refs again, Scott, so I'll let you you'll seem to be a little more favorable to his cause. So we'll keep it rolling here on the Gary Harris Show. I do want to remind you that Christmas time is a time for hosting friends and family. And if you want to spruce up your home in time for the holidays, you've got an opportunity with Just Add Shutters, locally owned and operated for over 24 years while carrying the prestigious A+ Better Business Bureau rating. They've got those incredible American-made hardwood plantation shutters. They can change the entire look of your home. Give Roy, Sam, and Bubba a call today at 205-752-3476. That's 205-752-3476. Just Add Shutters, Inc. Tom wants to chime in again on the refs, Scott. And again, Tom, before I let you go, I do want to say I'm as frustrated as everybody else by the officiating. I really am. And what I've seen, not just in the Iron Bowl, but all season long. I agree with both you guys on that. My point is, Tom, that I don't think they're trying to be bad. and Scott, Tom, I think thinks that they're not trying to get any better. But Tom, you got a more friendly compatriot here, I think, with Scott Moore. So go ahead and get it off your chest. He's back for more, Scott.
No, not really, Gary. Good morning, Scott, and
hey.
Good morning again, Gary. I'm not going to say anything about the refs. You let me have my little spiel there, okay. And I enjoyed the discussion. I thought you had some great points. And, what I appreciate about the show is you allow us to call in and give our opinion. And you're willing to take it on. I appreciate that. I respect you for it. And but, Scott and Gary, I wanted to bring something up. We talked about our defense and it being bad, but the one thing, I see talent all over the place on that defense, but I wanted to put this out, and I want to, as soon as I do, I want to hang up and listen to y'all discuss it. Coach Saban has pointed out throughout the entire season that the biggest problem they were having with playing defense was getting them to play together as a unit. Sure. He used the example of, well, I got to get my sacks, and he said, if you'll play as a unit, the sacks and the stats will come. And, to me, there's talent all over the field, like I said, but for whatever reason, they hadn't been a unit or unified in their goal on defense. And I believe that's why we give up some big runs, some big plays, this, that, and the other. I wanted to throw that out for the discussion and listen to what both of you have to say about that. But, hey, Gary, thanks for taking my call. I love the show.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. Go ahead, Scott.
Reaction. Well, I tell you, he's right. First of all, listen, when you play cohesive, it's usually because you got experienced guys out there. And when you get as many injuries as Alabama's had, hey, DJ Dale didn't even make the trip. And he's the guy that's been plugging up the middle all year for you. You have a lot of inexperienced players playing. A lot of guys played a lot of minutes Saturday that hadn't played a lot of minutes in a big game all year. And listen, the injuries were a major factor in the youth on the defense this year. Gary, they were probably at one time, I need to go back and look at the play chart, but I know there was at least 9 freshmen that played on defense Saturday and probably 4 or 5 that were on the field most of the day. And then late in the ball game, I know Christian Harris got dinged, and he was out of the game. So, you're out there really on defense this year with a skeletal crew, really, to be honest with you. And it's hard to be cohesive, hard to play as a unit when there's probably only 2 or 3 guys on the defense that know how to operate that defense at a high level. You were without a Mike linebacker that knew what was going on all year with Dylan Moses being gone. In the secondary, you had experienced guys back there, but let's be honest, the guys that were starting this year were not as talented as guys in the past. That's nobody's fault. That's just a fact. So a ton of youth out there, a ton of inexperience, and a ton of injuries this year. I thought Raekwon Davis probably played his best game of the year Saturday. I thought 33 played fantastic. Obviously, Xavier McKinney played great. And, but the bottom line is when you have youth, even in the 12th game of the year, when you have inexperienced players and they're still learning how to play a complicated defense, and you're playing down there in that environment, listen, to give up 31 points, and I thought they did a good enough job to win the game Saturday. Now, listen, they didn't play well enough on defense to beat LSU a few weeks ago, but they played well enough on defense all year to get this team to 11 wins. So, that was there's a lot of reasons why execution wasn't where it was. But, again, my point, what I said earlier is Alabama needed to get a stop and couldn't get one. And that wasn't directed at anybody in particular or any experience or nothing. You got to be able to get off the field and win a game like this. And late in the ball game, you need to stop and on 3rd and 5 at the goal line and let them run one in. So,
all right, Scott, let's. I want to get to one more call before we wrap up this first hour. And in the second hour, I'm going to give you some reasons that really you should feel good about this team, what they've accomplished with what has hit them. I don't know that anybody else in the country could have done it. But let's get to Paul real quick here before we wrap up the first hour. Paul, you're on with Scott Moore and Gary Harris. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Gary, big fan, first-time caller, but long-time listener.
Thank you.
Just touch, and you've touched on a few things already. I don't know if many Alabama fans realize, but Coach Saban's combined record against Auburn at Jordan-Hare, even as LSU and Alabama head coach, is 3-7 now. 3-7.
Yeah. Hadn't beat a ranked team at Jordan-Hare.
He has dominated pretty much every other venue in the SEC and maybe the country. But that place, Jordan-Hare, is his Waterloo. And as great, and you touched on it earlier in the show, as great as Alabama's run has been, Auburn is right there. Yeah, they're Saban is 8-5 in that run, but I tell you what, I think Auburn takes this game as a challenge to their manhood. I mean,
you're exactly right.
They look Alabama right in the eye and say, "Come get it, come get you some." When it's down there, you said earlier, and you're right. Alabama has wore them out pretty much in Bryant-Denny. But when that game's in Jordan-Hare, it's a completely different animal.
I agree with you 100%, Paul. I think that's a good way to look at it. They challenge their manhood, and again, this goes back to Dye, and Chick Jordan was a great football coach and did a lot of great things. But when Dye got there, he said no more. Scott, you remember it well. He said, we'll never be second-class citizens in this state again. He changed their mentality, and Paul's exactly right. It's the last game of the regular season. I don't care what's happened up until that point. When they host Alabama down there at Jordan-Hare, their mentality is this is what we have to do to keep everything on track. If we beat Alabama, we have had a season that our fans are thankful for. And they've had good football teams too, Paul. That helps as well.
They have. You're exactly right. But I think, and Alabama has to meet that challenge. Somehow, some way. I know it's there's a line out there that Coach Saban takes the LSU game more serious than the Auburn game. I don't know if that's true or not. It may not be, but the facts show that at least on paper. Listen, Alabama has dominated LSU for the last really 40, 50 years, if you get right down to it, and have totally dominated the series in those years at Tiger Stadium. But at Auburn, when we go back down there in 21, and I fully expect Coach Saban to be the coach as well, we have to meet that challenge head on. I mean, there's just no denying that it's a different game for Auburn in Jordan-Hare than it has been for Alabama.
No doubt about it. Hey, Paul, we're at the top of the hour. Great call. Good to hear from you, friend.
Thank you.
All right, it is 9:58. We got to get to the break. Another segment with Scott Moore, and I think Alabama did meet the challenge. They just need to make another play, but they brought it, and we'll talk more about that in hour number 2 with Scott Moore, iTalkSEC Radio. Hour number 1 is up, thanks to the Alabama Credit Union. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of the Gary Harris Show is on the air. It's a Middle Monday. It is a reaction Monday, maybe an overreaction Monday for that matter. And we are discussing the Iron Bowl. Scott Moore from iTalkSEC and the Jay Barker Show with us for another segment. Then Rodney Orr from Tider Insider TV and TiderInsider.com. We're going to get right back into the Iron Bowl in just a second. But, Scott, I do want to mention the passing of Pat Sullivan, who was an incredible football player, Auburn's first Heisman Trophy winner, the first Heisman Trophy winner from the state of Alabama. And just as good a gentleman. And there are people on both sides that, at least there should be, and he's one of them, that are beloved by both fan bases. And I think Pat Sullivan was one of those guys. Nobody that ever met him considered him anything less than an incredible gentleman. And he had battled with cancer and passed away in his sleep on Saturday night, so following the Iron Bowl. But I know you knew Pat pretty well, and we certainly want to send out our condolences to his family and to all of his fans, and the world was a better place with Pat Sullivan in it. I know that.
He was a consummate Southern gentleman. The thing about Pat Sullivan that stood out, and I think everybody would echo this, is his humble attitude. You would have never known just meeting Pat Sullivan. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, one of the greatest players in SEC history, and just an icon of the state of Alabama. And he was always very unassuming. But he also carried a strong presence about him. And every time you were around Pat, whatever event it was, a dinner, a Hall of Fame ceremony, or just a speaking engagement, he always made everybody around him feel more important than him. And that is the mark of true humility. He was a wonderful human being. He really was. I remember that 71-72 or 1971 Alabama-Auburn game with he and Musso. That picture in the Birmingham News of them hugging each other at the field, and one of the great iconic pictures of this rivalry. So Auburn fans are going to miss him, but the state of Alabama is going to miss him, and the Heisman Trophy people are going to miss him as well.
No doubt about it. All right, back to the Iron Bowl and R.I.P. Pat Sullivan. I said last week, Scott, and I meant it then, and I want to get your reaction to it. I put my money on Nick Saban in this game. I picked Alabama to win it. I said Nick Saban is one of the greatest coaches of all time. I think Gus Malzahn's a good football coach, but I put my money on Nick Saban. I said he'll have him ready to play, and I said if Auburn wins the game, I'm just going to tip my hat. And I still say that because I think Alabama was ready to play. I think Alabama did have a great week of practice. I think Alabama brought everything you could expect your football team to bring. I thought they brought emotion. I thought they brought energy. I thought they brought intensity. I thought they played hard. I thought they played with effort. I thought they never quit in the game. And I thought, again, that offense gashed that vaunted Auburn defense for well over 500 yards. So I tip my hat to Auburn. And I tip my hat to Gus Malzahn. He's sneaky. And to get the officials to buy into his line of thinking in there before the end of the half and basically get that overruled and get that field goal in, which was huge. And then at the end of the game to dupe out Alabama with the formation with the in the punting situation to never even have to kick that football and to get Jalen Waddle off the field was what they were trying to do, and it turned into them getting a penalty. You got to give them credit. They won the game, even with all the flaws and all the questionable calls and so forth. They beat an Alabama team that, despite the mistakes, played hard, played well, and at the end of the day, I just think Auburn won the football game. I know the mistakes were too much to overcome, but I thought Alabama was ready to play, and I thought Alabama played, minus the mistakes, very well in the football game.
Well, you remember Wallace Wade always said nobody ever wins a football game if somebody loses it. And, that was very true Saturday. And listen, that final play, all the controversy involved with it. Listen, I've been trying to get Waddle off the field too, because Waddle single-handedly, as one of the greatest individual performances ever put on in that stadium Saturday by anybody that's ever played there. And Waddle and everybody, he was the best player on the field Saturday by a wide margin. It wasn't even close. And I'd have been trying to figure out a way to get him back from returning the kick too, because all he needs is a crease. But listen, the way Mac Jones played after he made a mistake, usually in the past we've heard on the practice field that Mac would make a mistake and then really affect him 4 or 5 plays, after he made that mistake. The mark to me of a championship quarterback, okay? A championship quarterback forgets the last play he made and comes back and just continues to just push through. He only pushed through after those pick sixes. He made some of his best throws of the night after those pick sixes. And had he not been able to pick himself up off the mat, a pick six is one of the biggest momentum changers in any football game you can get. Like I said earlier in the first segment, Jim Tressel said a 73% chance you're going to lose a game. At any time of the game, you throw a pick six, and you threw 2. That hadn't happened in 20 years against an Auburn team down there in Jordan-Hare. I think the last time it happened was that crazy LSU game, and they got 3 returned for a touchdown. So, but the fact that Alabama kept playing despite those mistakes, it was a sign of a team effort. All the players went over to Mac and said, "Hey, you're okay. We have you." That was a good sign over there on the bench. And they kept fighting and kept playing and put themselves in a chance and gave themselves a chance to go win the football game down there when all the things that went wrong. Gary, there were 8, 9 things. If you change just one of them, you win the ball game. But you had to overcome as much on the road Saturday as anything I've ever seen an Alabama team have to play in. And to have a chance to win that game with the injuries, with the best quarterback in school history sitting on the sidelines in street clothes, the penalties, everything you had to overcome, which is, we call it, obstacles. They still had a chance to win the ball game. And look, this team, as you said, they won 10 football games this year. They got to get an opportunity to go win 11 for the 10th straight year. That is a remarkable achievement. And you need to finish the season now on a good note. Take this game seriously. You're going to go play in and go out with 11 wins. And I think Alabama's got a reasonably good shot at doing that.
You said something there with Alabama overcoming what it overcame, and I know there's disappointment. This is a program built on championships, and particularly here in the last 10 years, and not in the playoff. You lose to LSU, you lose to Auburn. That's the first time that's happened since 2010. And the schedule outside those games wasn't too tough. But still, for this team, with what it lost to the draft, and then to lose the players on defense that it lost, and then to lose Tua, 10-2 is nothing to scoff at. There are a lot of programs that in similar circumstances probably wouldn't have gone 6-6 or 7-5. I mean, this team has battled through constant adversity all season long. It's never been a smooth season in terms of sailing. So there is some positive to take away from this campaign. You could win 11 games if you get the bowl victory, and then have some momentum going into next year, because I can't imagine that there'll be another season anytime soon that rivals this one in terms of the injuries. No,
I mean, it's really been going back to 2 years ago, the rash of injuries to key players and important players, but the best players at their position, guys that, the injuries to the Mike linebackers the last several years, quarterbacks on defense have been unbelievable, injuries on the offensive line, just one thing after another. And look, if you're a great program and you're a dynasty, and that's what Alabama is, you're going to face adversity. You know what? It's how you respond to that adversity is what shows your true character and shows how long you want to continue this. So I don't think Alabama's going anywhere. I know there's a lot of people that were hitting the panic button and ready to jump off the mountains the other night when you lose a game like this, and it hurt. It ought to hurt. It hurts on both sides when you lose this football game, and losing to LSU hurts as well. And you know what? You got to go back. You've got to figure out what you did wrong. You got to make a commitment to get better, because next year it doesn't get any easier. Starting with USC and Georgia in the first month of the season, next season, and at Tennessee and at LSU. So next season is going to be just as big of a challenge. So you've got to go back in the off season, but finish this season on the right step, and get your mindset and your players' mindset ready to go out for next season. Got to finish strong in recruiting, because I think Nick Saban is the kind of guy that when he has adversity, he doesn't look for a way out. He looks for a way to come out of the fire and be purified like gold. That's what Nick Saban looks for, is that, and that's what makes him the best, and that's why this program has been so good. There's other programs going to go through adversity too, Gary. It's going to happen. It's football. And everything's just not hunky-dory all the time. It's going well for Clemson right now, going well for Ohio State. Alabama's got to weather the storm. They got the best in the business to do so, and I think they will.
What do you look for in terms of Alabama next season with Tua gone? Mac Jones certainly made a statement, and you've got Bryce Young coming in. You've got Talia. Do you think that the offense will be tweaked any, or do you think they'll just stay with what they've implemented with Sark and with Tua?
Well, first of all, I've seen a lot of criticism of Sark, and there should be none. I mean, we can all question play calls. When a play call works, you're a genius. It doesn't work, then everybody wants to throw you off the mountain. First of all, he devised the plan Saturday with a backup quarterback that did whatever it wanted Saturday, okay? Ran it when they wanted to, threw it when they wanted to, and they executed at a high level. They were ready to go. I think what you do next year, you got Trey Sanders coming in, who is a remarkable tailback. Alabama fans are going to love him because not only does he have power and speed, he can hit the home run for you. He is a difference maker at tailback. Royale Williams comes in also. That's going to help with Brian Robinson there. You got Jalen Waddle. You got Mechie at receiver. You've got a really good nucleus of the offensive line. I don't know what Wills or Leatherwood are going to do, but still they are very talented guys up front. You can still run a very, very sophisticated passing offense next year. And for me, somebody's going to have to come in and beat out Mac Jones, because to me, he looked like a dang good starting quarterback in the SEC on the top 5 teams. So for me, Mac goes through the spring with an opportunity to seize control of the job, and somebody else is going to have to come in and beat him out. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do. So I think the offense is going to be very, very good. Waddle could be probably the most dangerous player in the conference next year. And then on defense, all this youth that you played this year is all coming back next year. So you've got a ton of talent and a ton of young players that are coming back next year, and a lot of guys coming in this recruiting class. I think they can give you instant help at linebacker and certainly in the secondary too. So it's going to be a very talented team. It's going to be another young team, but that's no excuse around Alabama. Again, the schedule, Gary, very challenging. Probably the toughest September Alabama's had to open in the Nick Saban era, with Georgia coming to Tuscaloosa and opening with a USC team that we have no idea who's going to be coaching that team right now.
For Auburn, this game does change everything. I don't think there's any doubt about it. If they lose this game, that's 4 losses, 4-4 in the SEC. Gus Malzahn's their coach, and they go into the offseason feeling all kinds of negativity and kind of like we're stuck with this guy. Now the realization is that you got a guy that's beaten Nick Saban 3 times, that's taken you to a national championship game, that's won an SEC title. I think I've been saying this for some time. I never understood why they were so upset with him to begin with. But it just changes the whole mentality of their program. Now, the key for them is, what are you going to do next year? Because we've seen Auburn, they're up and down, man. I mean, you can see them play for a championship, and you can see them, they played for a national championship one year. The next year they won, I think probably 6 games, and then 2 years after that, they fired their coach for not winning a game in the SEC. What are you expecting out of Auburn in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, when you get Pat Sullivan back, you've got most of your offense returning, and it's their offense. I know they lose their offensive line, but they got all their skill guys back, and so their schedule, they got to go to Bama. They don't have Florida on the road. They got to go. They get LSU at home next year. A lot of home games for them. That'll work out well for them. But they're going to be talented, and they're going to be in the mix. Again, for me, next season, it's pretty obvious. Alabama, LSU, and Auburn are going to fight it out for the West right now. A&M is still a little bit behind over there. But Auburn will have a very good football team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and a lot of confidence based on what they did this year. Now, defensively, it's going to be an entirely different look. They lose a lot. They lose some big-time players on the defense, but you got Kevin Steele, who right now is probably the best defensive coordinator in the SEC and one of the best in the country. When you've got that kind of coaching staff on defense, it tells you that you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot.
All right, Scott. I know this conversation is going to continue all day here on Tide 100.9 FM. Part of it will continue with you guys on the Jay Barker Show at noon. What you got coming up?
Yeah, man, we'll probably rehash it. Probably be 4 or 5 other things I didn't say that I'll probably remember. We'll start talking about that. But yeah, good roundtable discussion coming up, Gary, but what you had this morning was fantastic, and fans are passionate, and you do a great job and facilitating all that, man. So we all got a good thing going here. It's good to be all the teammates right now as we move through 2019 into 2020.
All right. Thank you a lot, Scott.
Thank you, buddy.